Hi friends, today we got a little bit of a different video for you. I decided to do a tier list of the consoles that I own. So you can see already that I've taken all the handhelds out and I've taken out stuff I don't own. So let's jump right in there. So first off, let's jump into the PS3. PS3 is actually the first adult console that I bought. I had consoles before then, but this is my first adult console. Brand new, that is. It came out when I was in college, and I was super excited because it had Blu-ray. It was like the cheapest Blu-ray player you could get. We could finally watch good stuff that way. The launch games were pretty good, and I was just sold on it. I didn't look back. Part of the tier list for consoles for me is thinking about how good is it to go back to, or how good will it be to go back to? What are the games? And PS3 games are okay to go back to. They're not the great. I think it's a solid B. N64, really hard to go back to. I love my N64. It's the first console I owned myself as a child. It's really hard to call it a C tier, but it's definitely a low B just because the games are so hard to go back to. I'm looking forward to Analogs coming out with what are they calling it, a 3D, so that those games there can see how they look, because one of the biggest problems with playing the N64 on modern displays is the best you can get out of an N64 is S-Video. So it's not great, especially upscaling that 240p signal or whatever it may be outputting. So that's not great, but we'll see. Playing on a CRT is pretty enjoyable. A little different though. Sega Genesis. Probably gonna make some people upset with this one. I'm not a huge Sega guy from a Genesis standpoint. I think the Super Nintendo's way better. I've got probably about 15 or so Genesis games. Very enjoyable. Sega has a very different style of games where I feel like they are way different than how Nintendo makes games. So that's a little different that way for me. PS1 for me, I don't have a lot of reason to go back to those games. I feel like they're worse than going back to the N64 games, not in quality, but in the games that Nintendo made. Versus all of the good stuff for Sony, for the PS1, has been redone. Like your Crash has been redone, your Spyro's been redone. You can play a lot of those games on other consoles, whether it's a Metal Gear Collection or whatever it may be, right? So for me, that's a C. The next one's a Wii. The Wii is kind of a weird one because at the time it was amazing. It was something that was a lot of fun. I don't want to say it's a C. The games aren't that great to go back to. They're very gimmicky, right? There's some really good games in there that just got kind of screwed over. That could have been better if they didn't have waggle controls. You know, obsessive use of motion controls. Like trying to get some of the good games that are out there. Would I rather play an N64 game or a Wii game? I don't think it's a C, but it's definitely, I'd rather play an N64 game than a Wii game. Like going back and thinking about like, I have like 40 Wii games. So maybe I should make a video of my Wii collection. Maybe I'd have stronger feelings about it thinking back kind of retrospectively. The NES for me is weird because I didn't have one growing up. I played one, family, friends, and stuff like that. And I recently got one 3 years ago from my friend Kevin because he was selling his collection and some of the stuff I had kept for myself. And I'd rather play NES games than Genesis games. Some of this might have to change because I'm throwing a lot of stuff in B tier. Like, I'm going to say right now, the PS3 needs to go up. Because the PS3 has some really good games. You know, like 3D.Game Heroes is amazing. For example, that's going to be a lower A. We'll see. Those are going to be adjustments as we go here as I try and... Once you look at them and you might say, oh yeah, this makes sense when you put it in context, right? Sega Saturn is super cool. I feel like the Saturn just gets zero credit. And it has a lot of good games. The games are very expensive, but a lot of cool games. I'd rather play PS3 games than Saturn games, and I feel like that's my common theme of like, looking at all the games now, what do I want to play? So for me, would I rather play a Saturn game or an NES game or a PS3 game? That's kind of where my style is at, because to me, graphics aren't important. And you'll hear me talk about this when we get into like current gen. I don't have a PS5 or Series X, but yeah, we'll get to that. GameCube, S tier. The GameCube library is amazing, and you could extend the Switch's lifespan for another couple years just porting GameCube games. I'm not even talking about remastering. I'm just saying porting. Like, F-Zero GX could just be a Switch game. And people be like, oh, this is a good game. And be like, oh, what did they change? Or, oh, this was on the GameCube. How do they remaster it, remake it? No, it's just the same game. It's good. Dreamcast is super cool. Dreamcast is cool for me because they took a lot of games that were on the PS1 and N64 and ported them to the Dreamcast, and they're actually good. I've actually had games in my library that I sold and bought on Dreamcast because they were better. PS2 at the time was amazing. Like, again, same thing as PS3. Had a DVD player. I got one in high school secondhand from my cousin. I watched a ton of DVDs on it. I was a huge God of War fan. Loved playing those games back in the day. Tiger Woods 04. I have so many hours into that game. And of course, back then I was big into Madden. I never really got into Madden on the PS3, but you know, high school days, playing competitive sports games against your friends. A lot of good memories there. But the age-old question is, do I want to go back and play the games? And I do. There's some great games. Onimusha 3 is probably my favorite game on that console. That game could be a movie. And I feel like I'd rather play that than some Dreamcast games, like overall for the games that I own. I've probably got, I don't know how many PS2 games I have. More than 20? Switch is S tier. The Switch library is amazing. I have more Switch games than any other console. It is going to age well. I worry about the longevity of the console, and there's probably going to be, like, this is my prediction, like in 10 years, someone's going to make like a Switch with no screen. Like a third-party company is going to be like, you can play your games, your Switch games on your TV, and don't worry about the handheld. Because those screens and those batteries I worry about. But it's my favorite console as far as like games. Master System is a really weird one for me. I really don't see the allure, and it makes sense on why I didn't do so well. Because any game that's on the NES and the Master System, the NES one is usually better, with the exception of like Rampage, which is one of the Master System games I have. But it's definitely bottom of the barrel for me. If I had to get rid of a console, that'd be the first one that would go, but it's part of my family and I really don't want to get rid of it. I've even thought about getting like a power-based converter for the Genesis and just being like, oh, I have the games that I want to play and I don't need the system, but it's like, there's so much that goes into like the hardware for me, which is why I'm not a huge fan of emulation, is it just doesn't feel the same. Or like, if I emulate games on my Wii from older consoles, the controller doesn't feel right. It feels weird going through the menus. Having that original hardware and playing that way, or even like the analog or retro USB has a good NES clone console in that you can use your original controllers and you use your original cartridges. It just feels good to play that way. PS4 is probably one of the systems I have the most hours in, believe it or not, because this is where I played like a ton of Call of Duty. I played a ton of Call of Duty on the PS3 too, but I played a ton of Call of Duty with my friends. I played a lot of Apex Legends. I played a ton of the free games through PlayStation Plus. Spent a lot of time in there. It's the backwards compatibility is what holds it back, which Xbox has, but the PlayStation library I feel is better. PlayStation has better first-party games. So I feel like it's an A tier, but it's, or excuse me, an S tier, but it's like bottom of S tier for me. The Wii U is super cool, and again, almost all the good games have made it to Switch. So there's not a ton of good reason to go back to it. For me, the Wii U is saying, what games are on Switch that I can get cheaper and play on my Wii U? And then I also have probably have like over a dozen digital games that way, especially like playing DS games on the Wii U is cool. It would have been super awesome if they put a DS cartridge slot in the Wii U and you could just play them that way. It would have been amazing. It's got to be like high C tier. Because I would still rather play Wii games. The funny thing is I play my Wii games on my Wii U. Because then they look, well, some would argue they don't look better. But it's more convenient than converting the Wii signal and my Wii U setup just to play them, so it's super easy. Xbox One is my newest console. I have the One X, not that that matters. I have the Gold Rush edition, again, not that that matters, but it's kind of a cool special edition. And it's my first ever Xbox console. I grew up as a Nintendo kid, high school and college, and beyond I was into the PlayStation, and then the Switch hit me, and then I went back to everything Nintendo. I had the N64 the whole time from my college days. I rebought it. I sold it in middle school, but I rebought it in college. I had a Super Nintendo that I bought in college, and for me it was always like Nintendo, and then I was PlayStation, and then I'm coming back to Nintendo now. And then, of course, you see PC is coming up, which is weird that that's on this tier list, but I just went with it. So for me, it's like, there's a ton of games backwards compatibility-wise that I can play. And I look at the games that I have and my desire to play them in my list of upcoming plays. That to me, the Xbox is up here. Like, if my PS3 was still backwards compatible with PS2, it would make a huge difference. I feel like that might be ahead of the PS3, but I'm just going to set it there for now. Super Nintendo to me has an amazing library. It's definitely S tier for me. I've recently got into Japanese games too for exclusives. Would I rather play a PS4 game than a Super Nintendo game? The answer is no. I have more hours in my PS4 for like weird reasons, like I was saying, but like if I'm gonna go back and play games, I'd rather go back to some Super Nintendo games. My PS4 library is kind of bare. I've been holding off on some bigger titles too, because I want to get a PS5 at some point when they're cheaper, and you know, we're later on in the consoles generation. The newer God of War games I still want to play, the Horizon Zero Dawn games I want to play, a bunch of stuff like that. I'm planning to play on PS5, so I'm just holding off. But I have a ton of Super Nintendo games. I love that console. And lastly, we've got the PC here, which is not fair. So I'm not even going to put it in here because I just wanted to talk about it. But trying to fit in with all these consoles is not the same. You know, PC gaming is much different. When I think of PC gaming, I think of like, what can I only play on PC, right? Versus I can't play this on any of my consoles. And like the newer games, AAA titles are kind of sucking right now. They're too focused on graphical fidelity and size and scale and not good games. Like, make some good games. That's why the Switch is up here, and why these top three are what they are, is because of the games. And console wars make no sense. Like, is Xbox better than PlayStation? Or back in the day, is, you know, Super Nintendo better than Genesis? Like, it's all about the games. That's all that matters, is the games. If you take away all the games, what are you doing with your console, right? So that's kind of how I look at it. But thanks for watching my tier list video. If you're interested in what some of these games are that I have, I am slowly posting my collection videos. I've done a GameCube collection video, I've done a Super Nintendo one, I've done an N64 one, I've done a Wii U collection video. My next one coming up is going to be the NES, so stay subscribed, look for those videos coming out. And if you want to see some of my streams of all these games, check me out on Twitch, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But have a great one. We'll see ya.